Welcome to Legacy Money. My name's Barry Page, and this is where we share the truth about money. My guest today is John Webster, a friend and colleague and fellow IBC practitioner joining us from Arizona. Hey, John, how you doing today?
Fantastic. Great to be on here.
Awesome. So today we're going to cover election news, as if you don't have enough election news already. But what we're going to talk to you about maybe is a little different twist on the news than what you're going to hear through the mainstream media, and why all of this might be important to you. So we're going to get started with the video and share all of the juicy details right after this quick intro.
My mission is simple, to help you protect your family and keep more of your money. I'm here to help level the playing field for families and those who seek the truth. There's always a new way to make money, but at the end of the day, it's your family's security and your legacy that matter. And I promise to help you protect what's really important to you. Legacy Money starts now.
Okay, we're back. My goal as host is to educate, to inspire, and to inform. We're going to share with you the truth about what's really going on with the election, some craziness that might be going on with voting, and why all of this might be important to you. So I want to start out just with a couple of headlines, and go ahead and share my screen here for you. Dr. Ron Paul publishes the Liberty Report. It's a great podcast. You might want to listen to it sometime. But just today, I listened to his podcast and the new COVID surge and why this is really just about the election and what's going on. He asked the question, what's going on? So fear is really driving the news out there. Fear and this pandemic. So regardless of where you may live in the country, there has been a surge in cases recently. But are cases what we should really be concerned about? Obviously, there's more testing going on, and but the news is the cases. While deaths are actually down in many of the states that took off the regulations here in the state of Mississippi, October 1. Was the last day, but our governor came back out about 2 weeks later, around the 14th and 15th, and issued another warning where certain counties did have, were asked, people to wear masks. So is this important? Well, of course it is. So it's about controlling us and keeping us in this constant state of fear. And I had to laugh when I read this next headline today. Is there really going to be another toilet paper shortage again? If you remember, right after the pandemic broke out, it was hard to find toilet paper. So the headline today, USA Today, Americans worried about election day violence and chaos are buying guns and toilet paper. Well, I can understand why they might be buying guns, and in our household, I guess toilet paper may be of concern as well. So I don't know. Is it really the problem? Is it that we're out of guns, or is it there's really a rush, or why are people buying toilet paper? I don't know, but I found that funny. How contagious really is COVID-19? And what are your thoughts on that? What do you think's driving all this news, John?
Well, media is driving most of the narrative, and it's what people hear, and they're afraid. From day one, countries started shutting down. It's a political year, and the media revved up the fear-mongering narrative, trying to scare people into submission, really, into their narrative. And we watched this year, it's been pretty amazing. 9 million plus first-time gun buyers, ammo shortages across the nation. It hasn't let up since about March. and a lot of that is driven by the fear. And then you start adding things like rioting and looting. You add in things like politicians that are screaming about defunding the police, and people asking for that to happen in cities. They're asking for social workers to respond to 911 calls instead of police, which means that people are really in a spot of deciding that they're going to need to defend themselves because they won't be able to depend on law enforcement to be there when they need them.
You know, that's a good point. I know here, I know a lot of my friends and people I know are getting gun lessons and taking classes on how to shoot a firearm and be safe and how to store their firearms. So I know you even invited me to a little time together on the shooting range. So what's it like out there? Do you find a lot of people are stocking up on firearms and ammunition?
They are. I actually am an NRA certified instructor, firearms instructor, and it's a passion that I support the Second Amendment, and I've found that there are a tremendous number of people, a lot of people I know who have purchased their first gun ever, and it's because of the concerns going on in our country right now, and they're then needing to get firearms training to be safe handling, and actually know what to do with that. But there are bigger things to discuss around that topic when it comes to firearms and firearms training, but also the actually understanding what the legal constitutional rights are regarding it, and then the legal ramifications. We're seeing a crazy polarity in the political landscape around firearms and the use of firearms for self-defense or justified shootings.
Yeah, I mean, just recently, the young man in Wisconsin who was attacked and shot, and then consequently, shot back, and of course, he's having to go through litigation now. So, yes, there's a lot on the line with the election, and our rights, and of course, there's the concern of voter fraud and what would happen.
Yeah.
You just mentioned the Second Amendment, and we just had a new Supreme Court justice added here recently. And,
yesterday.
Yeah. So a lot on the line, as well as the presidency. So how is that affecting things? I mean, what should people be concerned about? I mean, regardless of which side of the aisle or who they're going to vote for, what's that going to look like, for their family and their finances?
It's a volatile time, and people need to understand where they have their money, how they have it, how they are protecting, and how they're preparing for uncertain times. This is something that you can go back and you can study and understand history. History is very important to study and understand, but understand the truth about history, because those that don't know history are doomed to repeat the failures of the past. And so I find that, that is super important. Go back to the foundation, go back to the understanding, go back and actually know the truth about history, not false narratives that are being fed to you by the bucket load, but actually understand the truth.
That's a great point. Learn the truth, go to the source, learn your history. And unfortunately, it's not being taught in the schools today. There is a false narrative out there. Some people literally are trying to change history, the school books. And that's why all this is important, from your local elections all the way up to the Supreme Court. All of these things really, really do matter. And, you know, it's not like, I mean, I think the COVID-19 pandemic has really just brought a lot of this to light. And now we have the election. But, you know, we've already had devastating effects on our economy. And you just mentioned planning and preparing. I mean, that is something that I don't think most people were prepared. That's why we've already had a couple of bailouts, and, you know, they're talking about a third one. I don't know if it's going to happen just for the pandemic. I mean, it's really insane. But procrastinating about our future, our financial decisions, it really isn't even an option. And unfortunately, though, most people that I talk to of all levels of income and wealth, they still have their money stored in a government plan managed by a financial institution, right?
And it's still exposed to risk.
Oh, and not only is it exposed to risk, but it's just totally out of their control. It's not in their control whatsoever, regardless of what the market does. I mean, people think because they have a mutual fund and a 401k that they're, and maybe they've got a CD insured by the FDIC, that their money is safe. So we really need to understand what's going on. And again, procrastinating about this isn't a solution, because you find yourself in a very vulnerable position when things go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So but talk about that a little bit. I mean, so if somebody has their money in a 401k, who's in control of that? How does that work? What is a 401k?
Well,
Benefit of those that maybe don't know.
You know, I call a 401k a government partnership plan. And the reason is you've now gone into a partnership investing the government's dollars. You understand that, because you went into that investment with your dollars and the government's tax dollars, and you're investing your dollars and you're investing the government's tax dollars into the marketplace. That's what tax deferred means, that it's postponed the tax and the tax calculation. It's postponed it to an unknown rate and date. Now we get political topics and we hear about taxes going up or taxes going down. Biden, he says he wants to raise taxes on those people that have to spend more or receive more. Part of what that receiving is receiving your own money back out of a government partnership plan, a 401k or IRA, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of like a debt, a liability that you have, right?
Yeah.
When you own
Now,
one
if
of
you
those.
understand the history of those, you would know that it's illegal for the government to invest in the stock market. So instead, they came out with a qualified plan to have you invest their dollars for them in the stock market.
Right.
You know, the funny thing about it is most people don't realize that they, as the owner of that IRA or 401k, they're paying all the management fees. They're paying the management fees on their money. They're paying the management fees on the government's money. They're paying the trading and transaction costs on their money. They're paying the trading and transaction costs on the government's money.
And who usually actually manages the money, because it's out of the control of the employee or the person that has the 401k, right?
Yeah.
And people think that it's you know, the 401k. I literally had somebody tell me last week that a 401k is safe, right? I mean, that's why people, when I ask them, what does the 401k do? Well, it's a safe place to put your money. But who actually manages the money? I mean, who's in, you know, once it's in the plan, right? Who manages that?
Like, it could be managed by securities organizations, i.e. the, you know, big bankers, big financial firms, Wall Street
financial institutions.
guys. They aren't always at the highest character, right? I don't know if you saw what happened with the Big Short, the movie The Big Short.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's some ugly back dealing that goes on, and it all puts your money at risk as a person that places their money into those partnerships.
Right.
Out of
Absolutely. And all of that, it doesn't matter if you got a 401k, you can just have your money, in the markets in general. Not saying that, there's not money to be had there, but there's obviously some risk involved and there's manipulation, right? We're talking about election and election fraud, but if you really follow the money, if you just look at the advertising, right? I'm sure you've been bombarded by ads this week, this month, and they've really ramped it up. And I just heard this morning on the news, Michael Bloomberg, one-time presidential candidate. I don't know how long he lasted, how many votes he actually got in the primaries or anything, but he's putting over, I think they said $100 million more dollars into new advertising between now and the election. Well, that's a week away, right? I mean, come on. So that's a lot of money. So if you follow the money, there's a lot of politicians that are obviously concerned about this election. They're the ones writing the laws, making the laws, some of these lawmakers up there in DC. And I mean, if you just look at the list of them, I mean, you got the old crew, right? The swamp that they've been trying to drain. And then you got some of these new people, which I don't have to mention any names, but you just wonder how these people got to be on the Budget and Finance Committee, right?
Well, some of them, you wonder how they can even tie their shoes in the morning.
Yeah. Well, how did they get elected? Again, it's money, right? Millions, billions of dollars have been poured into these campaigns. And that's why you have people in high places that might not have the best experience, right? Yeah. So how did they get there? So it's about money. It's about control. And let's face it, these elites, these big banks, they don't really need money. They have all the money they could ever want. That's why they're able, Michael Bloomberg is able just to throw money at the election. George Soros, right? They have all the money they could ever want. It's about control, right? And they really want to control us. And, money is one way they do it. Elections, government is another way that they do it.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is our country was founded on morals and character. Our elections were founded on having an honest system to pick leadership. And I don't think we've ever seen anything with the kind of fraud that we're running into this year in the election cycle. I mean, I had a law enforcement officer tell me the other day that 147,000 ballots were just thrown out in the state of Pennsylvania because they were photocopied. I just had to talk to my congressman and the attorney general to investigate voter fraud here with regard to an incident that happened to me personally, right? Mm-hmm. Where they were using my address to try to register additional voters into the rolls and get ballots.
Now think about that, what you just said. That used to be, a major crime. They would hang you for doing stuff like that. But now, Project Veritas, over the past 2 weeks, has released videos, undercover videos, where they had these people actually admitting to stealing ballots, voter fraud, admitting on video. But I haven't seen it on the news. So another way that control these big companies, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Facebook, are manipulating the election. Voter fraud completely. They have Google executives admitting this stuff. People engineers. It blows my mind that it's happening. And it's going on right here in front of us.
And it's very hard to battle and constrain that unless you bring back enforcement against criminal activity. You have to punish crimes, rioting and looting in the streets. You have to punish crimes to stop unmoral behavior, criminal behavior. You have to punish crimes.
You're absolutely right. I was just looking. There's a book. It's called The Law by Frederick Bastiat. It was written in the 1700s.
Yeah.
But just what you're just saying right there, and the law, he says throughout the book, is justice, right? That's all the law government was created for justice, right?
Yep.
And if we're not enforcing the laws on the books, then what is the need for government? All that I hear and all that we see from any of the politicians is about expanding government, more laws, where we're not even enforcing the laws that we have on the books. And so now there's the big push to do away with law enforcement. Like we need more government and less law enforcement. It's literally insanity. So what is a person to do? What is a family? What can somebody do during this time? What's it should be important?
Well, I would spend some time. I'm going to share my screen and share a couple of sites where we can get some, people can get some education and start to learn some fundamentals.
So do you have that? There you go. Perfect.
So I would start with the Patriot Academy, founded by Rick Green. Rick Green teaches about the Capitol. He teaches constitutional coaching classes. He talks about the foundation of our country, educating on what the constitutional really says and is and how it applies. Goes back into the Declaration of Independence. He says that in some ways, the Declaration, which came more than 10 years before the Constitution, it is the most foundational document, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes into some great education offerings. He has a constitutional defense offering where you can spend time actually doing firearms training. This is what I invited Barry to, was doing constitutional training, constitutional coaching courses and firearms training all in 1 3-day event. Really, really neat opportunity to just get boots on the ground and knowledge and education at the same time. I would also recommend highly to YouTube and look up a guy by the name of David Barton. David Barton is probably one of the most knowledgeable on the historical documents of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. His research at Wall Builders, he's compiled historical documents where he shows the letters and the discussion leading up to from the founding fathers of our country, leading up to their writing the Declaration, writing the Constitution and putting it into action. Their discussion gives you a very clear light on why those founding documents were so critically important and what the real meaning of those documents is all about.
That's great. That's great. So while we're sharing websites, another place that is near and dear to our hearts that has just a ton of information is Mises.org, MISES.org.
You bet.
Ludwig von Mises, the School of Austrian Economics. So you'll find a lot of information there.
I found it interesting as I was going through some of the historical discussions on Wall Builders and on the Patriot Academy site, that they talked about historically that we had a very similar time with a pandemic in the midst of an election 100 years ago in the year 1920.
Can you make that a little bigger, John?
I think I can.
If not, I can try to zoom in on it. There you go. Perfect. There you go. Real good.
One of one of the interesting things was they talked about normal thinking will help more. Normal living will have the effect of a magician's wand. Paradoxical as the statement seems, the world does deeply need to get normal. Certain fundamentals are unchangeable and everlasting. Now, that sounds like something someone might say right now, right?
Right.
But that was Harding. He went on to observe that those who expanded the government during times of crisis, whether it be because of war or disease, are typically reluctant to return those powers back to the people.
And that was back in the day. I think we might need to go back that when the politicians would argue, they would just get out the guns and shoot it out, wouldn't they?
Yeah. This was, I think, 1919 during the Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Right? The pandemic. Yeah. It shut down the country. It shut down businesses. He goes on to say, we have a right to assume the automatic resumption of the normal state, but power is seldom surrendered with the same willingness with which is granted in the hour of emergency. But I think conscience and conviction of the Republic will demand the restored inheritance of the founding fathers. Wow.
Pretty strong, isn't it?
Right? That's pretty amazing.
The hour of the emergency, I think we're there, right?
Yeah.
But I think people are getting that hour is stretched on for about 7-8 months now. So
yeah. So it was interesting that they had big shutdowns. They had businesses struggling, and in leading up to an election, massive economic recession came on the back of the armistice, lingering worries about the Spanish flu. At that time, vice presidential candidate Calvin Coolidge recalled the country was already feeling acutely the results of deflation. Business was depressed. For months following the armistice, we had persisted in a course of much extravagance and reckless buying. Wages had been paid that were not earned. The whole country, from a national government down, had been living on borrowed money. Payday had come, and it was found that our capital had been much impaired.
The government was living on borrowed money. Imagine that.
Wow. Right? And so, we watched that. If you study history, what happened following the 1920 Spanish flu? The markets came back, kind of rallied a little bit, and then we went into the Great Depression. Right?
Yeah. And so that's important right there, because the Great Depression, we had the Roaring '20s, and then we had the Great Depression. Now think about where the economy's been. Yep. Think about all-time highs in the market. Now we had a big drop with the Dow yesterday, but really all-time highs before really this pandemic. Yeah. And if there is another recession, depression, whatever it might be, I mean, it hadn't been too long ago, 2008, 9 that things got really bad. We're looking at another hurricane here in the next couple of days here on the coast.
Well, but and back up on that all-time high in the markets.
Yes.
That all-time high in the markets was almost twice as high in the markets as any prior administration, any prior president ever had in the stock market before this last 4 years, right?
Right. Yeah. So
almost double.
Sure. And, there's almost always, when there's a boom, there's a bust, right? Yeah. Austrian economists call it the boom and bust cycle.
Yep.
Now, we didn't really have that before the Federal Reserve, right?
No.
So when the Fed prints money, there's that. And I wanted to just, if I could take back the screen here, I wanted to just share something. I shared a little more of this in a podcast a little while ago, right when this was starting, but foreign interference, I talked a little bit about George Soros.
Yeah.
And, there's all this talk about Russian collusion. And of course, today we're supposed to get along, but yet these people are our enemies. So which is it? The IMF, the World Bank, they actually are asking for more money. Here's a headline: a global pandemic bailout was coming until America stopped it. Why should we be funding when we have our own crises here at home, right?
Yeah.
Why should we be funding the IMF and the World Bank and these other countries?
No.
And I think our president understands that. And I think people are starting to understand that we have our own bills to pay, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the IMF, they're standing there with their hand out in the World Bank. But this is a quote from Ron Paul: capital comes from savings. It doesn't come from the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
So regardless of how much money they print, that does not add to our savings. It does not build wealth, right?
Yeah.
It's artificial. It goes along with, what we've been talking about, the corruption. It allows for that. It allows for these boom and bust cycles, right? Because a business might take money during hard times, or a person, an individual, a family might take a government handout when they never would. Yep. But then the cycle begins, i.e. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, ACA, right? Welfare in general. And so this is artificial. It's not going to last. And so we need to focus on that. But what we really we can't control all of that. The government, taxes, spending. We can vote these people in and out, which is what today's topic is about: elections. So we can vote these people in and out of office. And Ron Paul served for many years. He also ran for president. But had he been elected, I believe that he was a congressman for many years. Had he been elected president, I believe that much of this spending would have stopped already.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's continued. So what we can do is we can take control of our own personal economies, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can control something that is near and dear to our heart, and that is the banking function. So here is a quote from my mentor and John's as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Banking is the most important business in the world.
Yep.
So that's from Nelson Nash, the author of the book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And this is definitely a way for you, me, us as American citizens to take control of our finances, to get it out of the hands of the financial institutions and the government. So regardless of what happens, if we do have an economic collapse, if we do have a depression, if we do have a recession, what are you going to do? Are you prepared? Okay. And if we do, then typically opportunities arise during those times. Just this weekend, I was traveling to Tennessee, and I was looking at property. And I found some property in just a beautiful place up on top of the mountain that was in foreclosure. So now, unfortunately, that's a bad time for the person that owned the property. But really, the best thing that could happen to them is if they were able to sell the property now, right? Before it went back to the bank, to the financial institution, right? So it's in pre-foreclosure. So there will be opportunities like that if we do have another market crash or if we do have an economic collapse. So we need to prepare. We need to be in control of our money, and we need to vote coming up in the election. So, John, what do you say about that? How? Why don't you end the show on that note?
Well, we got to get money back to the you and me level. We want to identify and gain controls and security around money. And, there are tools and vehicles like what Barry's talking about with our mentor, Nelson Nash. He pioneered tools and vehicles that had been used by the wealthy to protect their money and weather the storms for hundreds of years. And if you want to go back to the basics and you want to understand the Constitution, you want to understand what our founders really stood for. They stood for getting the government out of our pockets and out of our controls. It wasn't the government's job to babysit and take care of everybody. It was up to the you and me. And it gave us freedom and independence. And
Absolutely.
study how to gain your own personal freedom and independence, how to gain control, security, and be a part of a incredible opportunity in the economy by having capital when opportunities arise. Right?
Absolutely, because there will be opportunities and we just have to prepare. We just have to plan, as Nelson said, and it's a pretty famous kind of cliche is, hope for the best and plan for the worst, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have to be prepared. We have to look forward. We can't procrastinate. Get out and vote on November the 3rd. Vote your conscience. Do your homework. Study the. John gave you some sources. What's that website? One more time, John.
So there's Patriot Academy.
PatriotAcademy.com.
Yep. And then Wall Builders Organization.
Wall Builders Organization. And then Mises.org, MISES.org. Study up on your history, study up on money, and take care of your family. If you have any questions, any comments, please leave them in the comments section below. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you in the next episode of Legacy Money. Talk to you next time.